5 or 6 movies I really think are the greatest. I mean, I'd have to think about them. They're varied. But I know I always like The Tree of Wooden Clogs, but they're different kinds of films, you know. I like.
From being the king of the silver screen, Al Pacino is now the face of a fading legacy. Known for his intense performances and commanding presence, he has captivated audiences for decades.
Would you kiss me if I wear the hat?
No. Playtime is over, okay?
From his role in The Godfather to his gripping performance in The Irishman, he didn't just play characters, he became them. But as he ages, rumors swirl about his personal life. Has he truly faded from the spotlight? Or is he embracing a new chapter? Join us as we explore the legendary Al Pacino's life and uncover whether his journey has truly taken a sorrowful turn as he approaches 85. Al Pacino's tragic story. Despite Al Pacino's legendary status, many are unaware of the struggles he faced and those that he is still facing. Lately, rumors have spread that Al Pacino is living a sad life, leaving fans wondering if it's true. To understand his journey, let's start from the beginning. Born in New York, Pacino did not have a conventional family life. His parents had separated when he was just 2 years old, and his father had not been involved in his upbringing. Teachers had reportedly noticed his need for a father figure, and he himself admitted that he had been close to becoming a troubled teen. Raised by his mother, sister, and grandparents, he grew up surrounded by strong women who had guided him. Although his family had not been wealthy, he had described his childhood as adventurous and fulfilling. His grandmother had been the head of the household, and his mother, who had given birth to him at a young age, had played a significant role in his life. Looking back, he had always been grateful for their love and support. From an early age, Pacino had shown an interest in the arts. He had enjoyed performing anywhere he could, even on the streets, which had earned him the nickname the Actor. He and his friends had often acted out scenes from comic books and joke books, an unusual pastime for children in the Bronx. A childhood friend, Ken Lipper, had once recalled that Pacino had always been dramatic, effortlessly slipping into different characters. His talent and striking looks had made him stand out, and neighborhood girls had referred to him as Sonny Pacino, the lover bambino. Even as a child, he had reportedly used his acting skills to charm his friends and avoid trouble, hinting at the performer he later became. Determined to pursue his passion, Pacino attended junior high drama classes before transferring to the High School of Performing Arts in Manhattan. However, his mother did not support his dreams, believing that acting was not a suitable profession for people from their background. Despite her doubts, he had remained determined. He had viewed himself as a survivor and had continued to push forward. Unfortunately, the school's academic demands had proven too much for him, leading him to leave at the age of 16. Even though he gave up on schooling at such a young age, he never abandoned his ambition, consistently auditioning and refining his craft, striving through the hardship. His early years as an aspiring actor had been far from easy. With little money and no connections, he had often struggled to find a place to sleep and had sometimes gone hungry. However, he had not let these hardships break his spirit. Material wealth had never been his priority. His love for acting had been what truly mattered to him. He had spent his time reading, meeting interesting people, and learning from the world around him. Reflecting on those years, he had once remarked that poverty had not seemed unbearable, recalling how even a simple piece of pizza had felt like a luxury. But life wasn't done with a devastating blow and dealt him another. What was this event, and what impact did it have on his life? When life gives you lemons. At the age of 21, while still struggling to make a name for himself, Pacino had suffered the devastating loss of his mother, who had passed away at just 43 years old. Before he could fully process his grief, his grandfather had died as well. By 1962, he had felt completely lost, later describing that period as the darkest time of his life. Without a father figure, and now without his mother or grandfather, he had felt adrift. However, he refused to give up, enduring repeated rejections while holding on to the belief that success would eventually come. By the time he was 23, he joined the Actors Studio, where he had trained under the famous director Lee Strasberg. Despite this opportunity, he had often felt different from his peers, many of whom had come from privileged backgrounds. He had once admitted that he had seen himself as a vagabond among them. His appearance and Italian-American heritage had made him feel out of place, but he had remained convinced that when the right opportunity arrived, he simply needed to be ready. His professional breakthrough came when he landed a role in a play called Creditors. Although he had initially been plagued with self-doubt, surrounded by classically trained actors, he had questioned whether he truly belonged. At one point, he had even considered quitting, but his mentor, Charlie Lawton, had encouraged him to stay, a decision that carved his career. To this day, he has kept a photo from that performance on his mantelpiece as a reminder of how far he had come. Breaking into Broadway and Hollywood had been an uphill battle. Pacino had taken whatever roles he could, including performances in small cafes where he and his fellow actors had passed around a hat for donations. He'd later explained that this had been how they had managed to afford food at the time. Broadway, he had believed, had seemed almost unattainable. These early struggles had taught him the importance of persistence and creativity. However, the pressure of acting had begun to take a toll on him. He had turned to alcohol, overwhelmed by the demands of method acting. His first experience with drinking had been as a teenager, but over time, it had developed into a habit. He had often indulged after performances, believing he had earned it. His relationship with actress Jill Clayburgh had suffered as a result. He had later admitted that during one of his drinking binges, he had failed to notice that she had been feeling lonely. It had taken years for him to acknowledge his addiction, but in 1977, he had finally decided to quit. He had once shared that his friends had helped him realize that drinking had become a problem, and from that point forward, he had replaced alcohol with simpler pleasures like ice cream and Oreo cookies. His biggest break came in 1972 with The Godfather. Although he had almost lost the role of Michael Corleone, studio executives had initially considered actors like Robert Redford, Warren Beatty, and Jack Nicholson for the part. However, director Francis Ford Coppola had insisted on casting Pacino. Even after being given the chance, he nearly ruined his screen test by arriving unprepared and hungover. It had taken multiple attempts, but he had finally secured the role. At the time, he was already committed to another project, forcing him to navigate a way out of it in order to focus on The Godfather. Although he had only been paid $35,000 for the film, the role had changed his life forever. Success, however, had come at a cost. Pacino found the sudden fame overwhelming. He had admitted that adjusting to the attention had been a challenge. His mentor, Lee Strasberg, had advised him to accept it as part of the job, but he had struggled with it nonetheless. To cope, he had attended therapy 5 days a week for 25 years. He had also deliberately slowed down in the 1980s, acting in only 5 films throughout the entire decade in order to give himself time to process his newfound reality. Despite his legendary career, failure had not been unfamiliar to him. His 1985 film Revolution had been a critical and commercial disaster, flopping so badly that he had taken a 4-year break from films. He once admitted that nobody had seen the movie. Feeling exhausted, he had used that time to reflect. However, financial difficulties and encouragement from his then-girlfriend Diane Keaton had eventually drawn him back to Hollywood. His return in Sea of Love had proved that he was far from finished. Even after decades in the industry, Pacino's passion remained strong. He expressed the belief that as long as one had passion for their craft, they should continue working. He also acknowledged that age would eventually catch up with him, but he insisted that as long as he loved what he did, he would keep going. When it came to trouble, Al Pacino was no stranger to it. But this time, he found himself in a situation so dangerous, it threatened to drag him back into his past. What happened, and how did he fight his way out? Rumors of financial jeopardy. Al Pacino didn't step into acting for the money. But over the years, despite starring in unforgettable films, he somehow managed to burn through his fortune and the wealth he has acquired over the years. Eventually, he found himself in a financial nightmare that forced him to take on roles just to stay afloat. In his memoir, Sonny Boy, Pacino did not sugarcoat it. He was terrible with money. Things got so bad that he was left with no choice but to say yes to roles like Jack and Jill, a movie he openly admits he did for one reason: he was broke. It's hard to imagine how someone at the top of Hollywood could end up with empty pockets. However, reckless spending and a lack of financial know-how were dangerous for Pacino. At one point, he only had $90,000 left in the bank, a shocking number for someone who had once earned millions. Even worse, he was unknowingly spending $400,000 a month. His money vanished into maintaining multiple homes, apartments, and offices. One of the most ridiculous examples? He paid $400,000 yearly for landscaping on a house he didn't even live in. It wasn't just the homes draining his bank account. He was shelling out massive amounts of money on unnecessary luxuries, failing to keep track of what was coming in and going out. His spending habits were entirely out of control, and he had no idea how to fix them. Pacino could have pointed fingers at his accountants or business managers, but in the end, he blamed himself. "I didn't understand money, just like I didn't understand how a career worked. It was like a foreign language to me," he confessed. He had spent decades focused on his craft, leaving financial matters to others. And in the end, it cost him everything. The wake-up call came too late. By the time he realized the problem, he was already drowning in debt. By 2011, things had gone from bad to worse. His accountant had been running a Ponzi scheme, stealing from Pacino and other clients. The accountant landed in prison when the scam came crashing down, and Pacino was left with nothing. The realization that all his money had vanished was a devastating blow. He had worked for decades, earned more than most people could dream of, and now it was all gone. With bills piling up and no safety net, he started saying yes to projects purely for the paycheck, including Jack and Jill. While the movie wasn't a career highlight, it helped him stay financially afloat. It was a humbling experience for someone who had once been one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. He had gone from choosing roles based on passion to taking whatever he could get just to survive. But Al Pacino did not sit back and watch himself fall from grace. He made a bold move. What did he do, and how did it go? A surprising career choice. One of his more surprising career choices that still amused his fans till now was Al Pacino's decision to feature in the movie Jack and Jill, an Adam Sandler comedy that was widely criticized, earning only a 3% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. In the film, he played an exaggerated version of himself in a Dunkin' Donuts commercial that left audiences cringing. Initially, his fans were puzzled by his decision, but he later revealed that financial difficulties had played a big part. He explained that the offer had come at a time when he had realized he was out of money and had needed the job. Despite the film's failure, he took it in stride and even found humor in the situation. He remarked that many people genuinely believed the fake Dunkin' Donuts ad from the movie was real, expressing amusement at how often he was asked about it. His financial troubles had forced him to make major lifestyle changes. At one point, he had been spending recklessly, but when his funds ran low, he had no choice but to cut back. He had sold a house, taken on commercials in Australia, and even started teaching acting seminars to make ends meet. It had taken time, but he had eventually regained his footing. His financial situation had improved significantly thanks to later projects. He had signed a deal with HBO that earned him $10 million per movie, and his role in The Irishman had brought in a $20 million paycheck. Even in his later years, Pacino has acknowledged that residuals from Scarface continued to provide financial support. He had joked that he could survive on those earnings if he lived like a normal person. Looking back, he admitted that he had learned some difficult lessons about money management. His journey, from lavish spending to taking roles out of necessity and eventually regaining financial stability, served as a reminder that even the most successful stars could struggle if they weren't careful with their finances. Beyond his financial struggles, Al Pacino had a brush with death, an encounter that changed him forever. What happened, and how did it change the way he viewed the world? A thin line between life and death. In a recent interview with the New York Times, 84-year-old Al Pacino shared how his battle with COVID-19 in 2020 nearly cost him his life. The topic came up when he was asked about aging, and rather than offering a simple response, he revealed a terrifying ordeal that left a lasting impact on him. Pacino admitted that he found the idea of aging strange, describing it as absurd and difficult to understand. He even joked about wishing he could find steroids that wouldn't harm him, mentioning that he had taken some while dealing with severe COVID-19. However, his experience with the illness was far from humorous. He recalled that his condition deteriorated rapidly. What started as an unusual feeling of discomfort quickly turned into fever and severe dehydration. Realizing something was seriously wrong, he arranged for a nurse to come and help him. But before he knew it, he lost consciousness. He explained that at one moment he was sitting in his house, and the next, he was simply gone. His pulse had disappeared. Within minutes, paramedics and doctors arrived at his home dressed in protective suits that he described resembling something from a science fiction movie. When he finally opened his eyes, he was surrounded by medical professionals, one of whom announced, "He's back. He's here." The experience left him in shock, making him reflect deeply on the nature of life and death. Pacino admitted that he had never given much thought to death before that moment. He revealed that he didn't see bright lights or have any visions of an afterlife. Instead, he was struck by the realization that when life ends, there is simply nothing. Quoting Shakespeare's Hamlet, he referred to death as the undiscovered country and described it simply, no more. For the first time in his life, he truly grasped the finality of it all. As he has grown older, especially after becoming a father again in 2023, his view on life and death has changed. He acknowledged that some things simply happen without warning or control, including the passage of time. The birth of his fourth child, Roman, made him more aware of life's fleeting nature, and he admitted that his son played a role in his decision to write his upcoming memoir, Sonny Boy. While reflecting on his near-death experience, Pacino shared that having a young child at this stage of his life has given him a new reason to keep going. He described it as a campaign to stick around for as long as possible. His story wasn't just about surviving COVID-19. It was about confronting the reality of mortality, appreciating the time he has left, and finding new purpose in the people who matter most to him. Looking into his personal life, did Al Pacino's childhood experiences play a role in his decision never to get married? And what exactly made him shy away from commitment? Deep commitment issues. Al Pacino had certainly fallen in love before, but what had always held him back was his fear of vulnerability. He once admitted that saying no to marriage with someone he truly loved had been painful, and the heartbreak had stayed with him for years. One of his past loves, Kathleen Quinlan, had moved on, marrying Warren Long, though their marriage had ended the same day. Later, she got together with Bruce Abbott in 1994, and they welcomed a son together in 1990. However, even that marriage had ended in 2002. For Pacino, it was never about a lack of love. It was the idea of exposing himself to potential heartache that had made him hesitant. Marriage, in his eyes, had felt like an open door to inevitable pain, something he had wanted to avoid at all costs. Over the years, he had been romantically linked to several women, including his Godfather co-star, Diane Keaton. Though he had loved deeply, he had never let himself be fully open. Despite welcoming his fourth child with his ex-girlfriend Noor Al-Fallah, he remained single. In an October 3rd interview with People, Pacino had made it clear, "No, I have friendship." His representative had added that he and Al-Fallah had been close for years and were committed to co-parenting their son, Roman. Pacino and Al-Fallah had first been publicly linked in 2020, but their connection had begun long before that. They had met at a dinner party, where she had been impressed but had never expected a future with him. As a film school graduate, she had admired his work, but had never imagined he would one day be the father of her child. During the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020, their bond deepened. With Pacino living just down the street, they had spent every day together, playing chess, watching movies, and sharing stories. It was like film school with Al Pacino, she had recalled. As they had watched his films, from Scarface to Bobby Deerfield, their connection had grown into something more. But in the end, Pacino had remained true to his nature. Love had never been the problem. His fear of vulnerability had. Although Al Pacino never married, he is a father of 4. Pacino is already a father to 22-year-old twins, Olivia and Anton, with actress Beverly D'Angelo, as well as a 33-year-old daughter, Julie Marie, from his relationship with acting coach Jan Tarrant. His baby's arrival comes shortly after his Godfather co-star, 79-year-old Robert De Niro, announced the birth of his 7th child. While men can have children later in life, there are risks. As men age, sperm quality declines, making genetic disorders like Down syndrome more likely. Studies also suggest a higher risk of conditions such as schizophrenia, autism, and premature birth, which can lead to breathing difficulties and other complications. On the other hand, older fathers often bring stability. By this stage, they tend to be financially secure, own homes, and have the resources to provide a comfortable life for their children. Pacino, an Oscar-winning actor, certainly fits this profile. Some families find that older dads can also be more present, especially if they have the means to retire early and spend more time with their kids. For Pacino, fatherhood at this age is a mix of celebration and uncertainty. While he can provide well for his child, questions remain about the challenges of raising a newborn in his 80s. However, Al Pacino is never one to back down from a challenge, and best believe he is fully prepared for his role as a father to a newborn. Is Al Pacino truly living a lonely life now? As he grows older, does he ever regret never getting married? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.